The December wind cut through Chicago's downtown streets as I stepped out of the Blue Line station, my breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Christmas Eve had arrived with its usual mix of anticipation and dread. The city sparkled with holiday lights, shop windows glowed with warm displays, and everywhere I looked, families hurried past with shopping bags and excited children in tow. But me? I was heading to the one place that made my stomach knot every year, my parents' house in Lincoln Park. I clutched my small wrapped gifts tighter as I walked down the familiar tree-lined street. The Victorian houses stood like silent judges, their windows already glowing with the soft light of family gatherings. My parents' house was the largest on the block, a testament to Dad's successful law practice and Mom's real estate empire. "Emma, you made it!" Mom's voice rang out as I climbed the front steps, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the porch light. She embraced me in that careful way that wouldn't disturb her makeup or designer dress. "How was the train ride from... where do you live again? That little place in Wicker Park?" "Logan Square, Mom. And it was fine." "Of course, dear. Come in. Come in. Everyone's here already." The house smelled like pine and cinnamon, exactly as I remembered from childhood. The 12-foot Christmas tree dominated the living room, decorated with ornaments that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers, and the dining room table was set with the good china, the kind that made you afraid to breathe too hard. "Emma!" My brother Marcus called out from the kitchen, martini in hand. At 32, he wore success like a tailored suit, which, considering his custom Tom Ford jacket, wasn't far from the truth. Still slumming it in food service? Before I could answer, my sister Jessica appeared, practically glowing with her recent promotion at the travel magazine. "Oh my God, Emma! I just got back from Bali. You should see the photos." She paused, looking me up and down. "But I guess with your situation, international travel isn't really in the cards, huh?" I forced a smile. "Maybe someday." "Well," Dad interjected, adjusting his reading glasses, "at least you have stability. There's something to be said for knowing exactly what your paycheck will be every week." The way he said stability made it sound like a consolation prize. "Speaking of which," Mom chimed in, setting down her wine glass, "Mrs. Henderson's daughter just opened her own law firm. And the Morrison boy, you remember him? He's doing something with technology. Very lucrative from what I hear." The unspoken comparison hung in the air like smoke. Here I was, 29 years old, still working at Corner Cafe and Bakery in a job they saw as temporary, something I should have outgrown years ago. "That's great for them," I managed. "Oh, honey," Mom's voice took on that particular tone, the one that sounded sympathetic but cut like glass. "We just want you to reach your potential. Don't you want more for yourself?" Marcus laughed, not unkindly, but not kindly either. "Remember when Emma used to talk about opening her own restaurant? What happened to that dream?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "Life happened." "Well, there's still time," Jessica added, though her tone suggested she didn't really believe it. "I mean, look at what I've accomplished just this year. Sometimes you have to take risks, you know." The thing was, I had taken risks, more than they could imagine. But sitting there in their perfect living room, surrounded by their perfect accomplishments, I felt small again, like the little girl who could never quite measure up to her brilliant siblings. "Should we move to the dining room?" Mom asked, clearly eager to change the subject. I made reservations at Alinea for tomorrow night, a proper Christmas dinner. My treat, of course. Alinea, only one of the most expensive restaurants in Chicago. "That's really generous, Mom, but nonsense, it's Christmas. Besides," she smiled that cutting smile, "it's not like your cafe salary could cover it anyway." As we moved toward the dining room, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked tired, my brown hair pulled back in its usual simple ponytail, my wool coat clearly from Target rather than Michigan Avenue. For a moment, I let myself imagine what it would feel like to belong here, to have their approval, their respect. But tomorrow night at Alinea, things would change. They just didn't know it yet. Chapter 2. The Moment of Truth. Christmas Day arrived with the kind of crisp, clear sky that made Chicago's skyline look like a postcard. I'd barely slept, partly from nerves and partly from excitement. Today was the day everything would shift, though my family had no idea. The afternoon flew by in its usual blur of gift exchanges and passive-aggressive comments. Marcus gave me a practical set of kitchen knives. "Since you work with food, I thought you might need professional tools," while Jessica presented me with a travel guidebook for local day trips, for when you finally get some vacation days. Their gifts were expensive and well-intentioned, but they stung with their implications. That my life was small, my horizons limited, my dreams already diminished. By 5 o'clock, we were dressed and ready for Alinea. Mom had even insisted I borrow one of Jessica's dresses, a black cocktail number that actually fit pretty well, though she made sure to mention it was from her old collection. The restaurant was everything you'd expect from a 3-Michelin-star establishment. Intimate lighting, artistic presentations, servers who moved like dancers. Each course was a work of art, and the wine pairings probably cost more than most people's car payments. "This lobster is incredible," Dad said, savoring each bite. "You know, Emma, you should pay attention to how they prepare this. Maybe you could learn something for your cafe. It's a bakery too, Dad. We do more than just serve coffee." "Oh, I'm sure you do, sweetie," Mom said, not looking up from her plate. "But this is real culinary artistry. This is what professional cooking looks like. I watched them eat, watched them savor every expensive bite, watched them revel in the luxury of it all." Marcus was calculating the bill out loud. Jessica was taking photos for her Instagram, and my parents were discussing the wine like they were sommeliers. For nearly 3 hours, they continued their subtle digs. How Marcus's investment portfolio was really taking off, how Jessica's magazine was sending her to Tokyo next month, how proud they were of their successful children. And then the check came. Our server, a polished young man with a practiced smile, placed the leather folder discreetly beside Dad's elbow. The conversation continued for a moment before Dad glanced down and his face went slightly pale. "Excuse me," he said quietly, slipping his American Express card into the folder without looking at the total. We kept talking, something about Jessica's upcoming assignment, when the server returned. He leaned down close to Dad's ear and whispered something that made Dad's jaw tighten. "I'm sorry," Dad said, his voice carefully controlled. "Let me try another card." He handed over his Visa Black card, the one he was so proud of, the one that supposedly had no limit. The server took it with the same professional smile, but I could see the slight tension around his eyes. 5 minutes later, he was back. "Sir, I'm very sorry, but this card was also declined. Perhaps you'd like to call your bank?" The table went completely silent. Mom's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Marcus stopped mid-sentence, his mouth actually hanging open. Jessica's phone, raised to take another food photo, slowly lowered to the table. Dad's face had gone from pale to bright red. That's impossible. There must be some mistake." "Of course, sir. Would you like me to try running them again?" Yes, please do that." But we all knew. The silence stretched out like taffy, thick and uncomfortable. Other diners at nearby tables were starting to notice. This was the kind of scene that would make the rounds on social media. Rich family can't pay at Alinea. The server returned again, this time with the manager, a woman in her 40s who handled awkward situations with professional grace. "I'm terribly sorry," she said quietly, "but both cards have been declined. Is there perhaps another form of payment?" Dad fumbled for his wallet, his hands shaking slightly. I don't understand. Let me call the bank." "Dad," Marcus said quietly, "maybe we should—" "No." Dad's voice was sharp. "This is a mistake. These accounts have plenty of—" He stopped, looking around the table, seeing our faces, seeing the other diners who were definitely watching now. Mom looked like she might cry. Jessica was staring at her lap. Marcus was typing frantically on his phone, probably trying to figure out what had gone wrong. And me? For the first time in years, I felt completely calm. I reached into my purse, a simple black bag that Mom had commented on earlier. "Oh, Emma, we really should take you shopping," and pulled out my wallet. From it, I took a single card. Not a flashy metal card like Dad's. Not a premium rewards card like Marcus carried. Just a simple debit card from Chase. "I've got this," I said quietly, handing it to the manager. Every eye at the table turned to me. Dad started to protest, but I held up my hand. "Really, it's fine." The manager took my card with a grateful smile. "I'll be right back." The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the shocked silence of embarrassment. This was the bewildered silence of confusion. How could Emma with her petty job and her simple life, how could she possibly cover a bill that had to be close to $800? 2 minutes later, the manager returned. "Thank you, miss. Your payment went through perfectly." She handed back my card with a smile that seemed genuine this time. "Have a wonderful evening." I tucked my card back into my wallet, tucked my wallet back into my purse, and looked up to find 4 pairs of eyes staring at me like I'd just performed a magic trick. "Emma," Dad said slowly, "how did you— Shall we go?" I asked, standing up. "I think they need our table." As we walked toward the exit, I could feel their eyes boring into my back. 29 years of being the disappointment, the underachiever, the one who hadn't lived up to her potential. But tonight, I was the one who had saved Christmas. And tomorrow, I would tell them how. Chapter 3. The Truth About Emma. We rode back to my parents' house in complete silence. The kind of silence that fills up a car like fog, making everyone uncomfortable but no one willing to break it. Dad gripped the steering wheel a little too tight. Mom stared out the passenger window at the Christmas lights blurring past. In the back seat, Marcus and Jessica flanked me like bookends, both stealing glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Back in the house, we settled into the living room with its warm glow and familiar comfort, but the atmosphere was anything but comfortable. Someone had to break first. It was Jessica. "Okay, Emma," she said, curling her legs under her on the couch. "What the hell just happened?" "Language," Mom said automatically, but her heart wasn't in it. She was too busy studying my face like it might hold answers. "I paid for dinner," I said simply. "That's what happened." "But how?" Marcus leaned forward, his investment banker mind clearly trying to solve a puzzle. "Emma, that bill was probably $700-800. You work at a cafe. The math doesn't add up." Dad was pacing now, something he did when a case wasn't going the way he expected. "There's been some kind of mistake with our cards. I'll call the bank in the morning and get it sorted out. But Emma, I can't let you—" "Dad, stop." I held up my hand. "There's no mistake with your cards." They all stared at me. "What do you mean?" Mom asked quietly. I took a deep breath. For 3 years, I'd been waiting for this moment, dreaming of it, actually. The moment when I could show them who I really was, what I'd really accomplished. But now that it was here, I found myself nervous. "The cafe job," I began. "It's real. I do work at Corner Cafe and Bakery in Logan Square. 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. I make coffee, I serve sandwiches, I clean tables." "We know that, honey," Mom said gently. "And there's nothing wrong with—" "But what you don't know," I continued, "is what I do with the other 2 days of my week." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where I'd grown up, where I'd spent so many years feeling like I didn't measure up. 3 years ago, I started experimenting with recipes. At first, just for fun. I've always loved baking. "You remember how I used to make cookies for my college friends?" "Of course," Mom said. "You were always good at that." Well, I got better. A lot better. I started bringing things to work. Cupcakes, artisan breads, specialty pastries. Customers kept asking if they could order them. So I started taking orders. Marcus was frowning. Orders for what? Custom cakes, wedding cakes, birthday cakes, corporate events. Word spread pretty quickly. Turns out, people will pay a lot for really good, unique baked goods. I turned back to face them. I registered Emma's Confections as an LLC 2 years ago. I work out of a commercial kitchen space that I rent on weekends. I have a waiting list of clients that's 3 months long. The silence was back, but different now. Confused. Calculating. "Emma," Jessica said slowly, "how much money are we talking about?" "Last month, I cleared $12,000. In December, with all the Christmas orders, I'll probably hit 15. Dad stopped pacing. $15,000? After expenses? Yes. Mom's wine glass clinked against the coffee table as she set it down too hard. But why didn't you tell us?" That was the question I'd been expecting, the one I'd been preparing for. "Because of this," I said, gesturing around the room. "Because of tonight. Because of every Christmas, every birthday, every family gathering where you made me feel like I was failing." "Emma," Dad started. "No, let me finish. Do you know what it's like to sit at this table year after year listening to you talk about my petty job? Hearing you compare me to the Henderson girl or the Morrison boy? Watching you exchange those looks when you think I'm not paying attention?" My voice was rising now, 3 years of frustration finally spilling out. "I didn't tell you because I knew what would happen. You'd find a way to diminish it." "Oh, Emma's little baking hobby. How cute, Emma's playing entrepreneur." You'd pat me on the head and then go back to talking about Marcus's portfolio and Jessica's magazine articles. "That's not fair," Jessica said, but her voice was small. "Isn't it? Tonight, when your cards got declined, what was your first instinct?" "Dad, you started calling it a mistake. Marcus, you were already trying to figure out a solution that didn't involve accepting help from me. Because the idea that I might actually have money, that I might be successful in my own way, it literally doesn't compute for any of you." The room was quiet, except for the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. $15,000 a month, Marcus said finally. That's more than I made my first year out of college. "It's more than most people make, period," I said. "And it's all legitimate, all legal, all earned through actual work. Work that I love, by the way. Work that makes people happy. Work that lets me be creative and independent and build something of my own." Mom was crying now. soft tears that she wasn't bothering to wipe away. "We're proud of you," she whispered. "We've always been proud of you." "No," I said gently. "You've been worried about me. There's a difference." Dad sat down heavily in his leather chair, the one he'd occupied for as long as I could remember. "You're right," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry. It wasn't enough, but it was a start.